Hey everyone, welcome back to the video series Building an App from Idea to App Store in just 14 days. I'm Connor, an iOS developer, and I'm walking you through my 14-day roadmap of going from idea to shipped app in just 14 days, all using AI. We are building a native iOS app called Whisper, and this is a voice-first journal entry app. The problem that we are focused on solving is that people typically quit journaling apps because they're too slow and require too much focus. Whisper makes emotional check-ins so fast that the habit actually sticks. This is a journal app that people are going to want to use and build a habit of journaling, targeted at people that are new to journaling, want to slowly improve their mental health by means of journaling. This app is aiming to fix that. We have three core features. We're doing journal entry creation through your voice or through typing. We are doing smart mood tracking. AI is going to analyze the transcript, suggest a couple moods, and the calendar view is going to show color-coded mood history. And then we are building in streaks and motivation to kind of help build the habit of journaling. Yesterday, we built our first core feature, which is the journal entry. As you can see here, this is our app. You can record a journal entry with your voice. It will transcribe it and it will save that journal entry, and you can play back the audio. Today, we're going to be focused on building out the calendar view so this actually matches our design and is functional. We're going to be also focused on building out the detail view for the journal entry and an improved flow for a journal entry once we have finished recording it. So this is what it looks like when we record. We stop, it transcribes, then we're going to save. Now, the next part of that is being able to enter a mood and having AI help us with that. So because we're using AI for this entire process, I'm going to go over to ChatGPT. This is our chat where we designed the app, we worked through some feature ideas, created our wireframe, and now we're using it to help us build out all of the features. So we need a prompt to get us started for building feature 2. So before we dive right into building, we need to make a little bit of a plan, because if you remember in our initial design and wireframe, this is where we ended up. This chat is getting really long, and I would typically advise that you separate tasks out into separate chats, especially inside of ChatGPT, where it will remember what you are working on. But for the purposes of this video and ease of use, we are just staying inside the same chat. So I am looking for the mockups that it did here. So this is the design that ChatGPT came up with for us. This is the feature that we're working on today, building out. So I need some refinements here, right? We have a really good plan that we came up with earlier in this week, and now we need to find some things now that we're actually in the code, actually building out this app. So a few things that it did not do. It did not design what happens when you tap on a journal entry. So we want to be able to review that. We want users to see what the full journal entry was and what their mood was on that day. And then we need some sort of functionality when we're tapping on different calendar days. Obviously, we'll display the journal entry for that day, but we need to decide, is there anything else there? What does this whole thing look like? And so that is what we are working on right now with this prompt. I said, I want you to help me build out the second feature of this app. And then I just, from our one pager that we created earlier, copied the second feature details. And then I said, we need to plan out the journal entry detail view looks like, add a flow for after the journal entry is finished being recorded for the AI analysis and mood selection. We also need to decide how the calendar view functions as a whole. For example, when you tap on the specific date, and then let's see what it comes up with for us. Because it's really helpful the more time you spend planning before you dive into the code. And I don't mean spend days and weeks planning something. What I mean is just spend a little bit of time, like a couple minutes, prompting and making sure you have a clear vision of what you expect the AI to do before you ask it to do something. Because the clearer you can get on your idea and your expectations and how things should actually look and function, the better your prompt is going to be able to be and the better your outputs are going to be. So now that it's got some suggestions, let's go through these. Okay, the journal entry detail view. Where is it saying this? A focused, calm view to review an entry and optionally adjust mood. Opens from recent entries or from the calendar. It's got some design for us. Okay, that overall looks fine. And then let's review what the calendar view is going to look like. So a glanceable emotional timeline to let the user drill into review entries. Cool. We can choose one. Tap on a date with no entries. Light haptic, no sheets open. tap on a date with one entry, open entry detail view, tap on a date with multiple entries, open the day summary, just a month navigation. Okay, that sounds good for now. And then the last most important part of this is going to be our AI aspect. So we're going to use on-device AI to pre-select likely moods, then let the user confirm with one tap. The flow must feel instantaneous and calm. So we're going to transcript, which we're already doing, and then we are going to analyze the mood, and then there's going to be a soft selection, give some suggestions. So let's start building the detail view really quick. So I just asked it to write a detailed prompt explaining how the detail view should look and function. So we're going to let it write that prompt. And then once this is done, we'll go and throw that in our AI coding assistant for this app, which is Codex. This is OpenAI's coding assistant, and it lives just inside the terminal. That is this here. And so while that's running, this is all of our context from yesterday. So what I'm going to do is compact this down. So it's going to summarize everything we did yesterday and keep our context limit a lot more open, so we have mostly a clean slate moving into today. Because I don't want to have to go and re-explain everything that we've done. And then I also don't want to wait for it to study everything we've done. So typically I would recommend that you just start a new chat and ask it to study and make sure it's aware of the project things, everything that's going on. But just for simplicity, I'm just compacting this down every time we do it, because this is a small scoped app. But Codex is usually really good about reading all of the code. Okay, so it looks like our prompt is done. I am just going to trust that that is, and I am going to paste this right in and let that get to work. So while that is working, we want to prepare for our AI feature. So this part's going to be a little bit tricky because we're going to be using Apple's new foundation model framework for the on-device AI synopsis and summarization of this transcript. And there aren't any AI models trained on this yet. If you ask it, I think the training cutoff date is most of the current frontier models are cut off about January 2025. And so the foundation models came out this summer at Apple's WWDC and officially released, just a month or two ago. And so it's not going to be trained on that data. So what we have to do is go and get that data and give it to AI so that it can write this code for us. So I just Googled Apple Foundation models. It brings me up to their documentation. I am going to copy this and drop it in here just for now. But basically I'm going to feed that to a new chat and ask it to write up some instructions on how the foundation models work. Or I might actually just put that in Codex and say, we're going to use foundation models for on-device transcription. Study this link for the implementation. Can you confirm the next step you'd like from me? Should I go ahead and implement the entry detail view for that spec in SwiftUI? I want you to build. Make sure that you use our existing design system. Okay, so now it's going to go off and build that. Just a quick little overview of what the foundation models is. So this is Apple's on-device AI models. And they're really good for things like summarization and gathering the intent of something. This is really interesting framework that I've been learning about lately, and I think it's got a lot of promise for apps. And this is some of the stuff that I teach in my community app launch club, where I'm helping anyone that wants to build an app learn and leverage AI to build a native iOS app. I'm working on new modules to teach about the latest tooling with native iOS apps. That is one of the advantages of building native apps, is that you get instant access to the latest frameworks and tools. And so the foundation models being one of those, that's something I'm very excited about. I think it's really easy to use, and it's one of those really cool ways to add extra layers of polish into your iOS app, whether that's dynamic search suggestions, quick summarization on device. This can happen offline as well, which is a big advantage to a lot of users. Think about if your app has AI features and you're on a plane with no Wi-Fi, is your app still going to work? If it has AI features, it can with this models. They have really cool things like tool calling, submit an AI prompt and write your own tool calls for this. So if you need to get like weather data from an AI prompt request, it can do things like that. And I think it's a great unlock of more features that can be added to your iOS apps. So I'm going to let Codex go ahead and finish this plan. And then once it's done, we're going to review its work and then move on to the next feature. Okay, Codex is done with our entry detail view. Let's see how it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and run the project again. Oh, we've got some errors. Okay, so this is, we're just going to take a screenshot of, copy this, Control V to paste that image and say, let's fix these errors. Okay, and then when that's done, we're going to try and run the project one more time to see if they are resolved. Let's see if this runs. It does. Tap on one of these. And then we've got a nice little detail view here presented as a sheet. We can pull this up, change the mood, which that looks nice. Play this. That works. Change that again. Close that. The mood saves. We can't edit that, but we didn't ask it to let us edit, so that's fine. Cool. So now we've got a nice little detail view that works great. Okay, perfect. So now we need to get the calendar view up and running. So let's go back to ChatGPT. I'm gonna put that on my clipboard, and I said, I want you to now write a detailed prompt for the calendar feature. Get a prompt for that so we can get Codex working on the calendar. Perfect. So now we've got our prompt. Go back here, paste that. Let's now build out the calendar feature. Make sure to use our design system. That way our design is consistent throughout. Because like if you see here, that instruction really helped because this is very cohesive with everything that we have going on throughout the app. And of course, there's going to be little tweaks that you're going to want to make along the way. Like for example, when I play this, I would like if the timestamp counted down or counted up towards the full length of the transcript. That's just kind of like a little nice to have thing. My recommendation, if you're vibe coding this, make note of these little things as you go and just have them in a list. Instead of tweaking like everything one by one, I like to just get the app working and in a place where it meets our MVP criteria. And then I have a whole list of polish to come back to later. And they're typically really small things, right? Maybe we just want something to animate differently. We want a countdown timer. Maybe we want to change how this looks a little bit. And those kinds of things. So just keep note of those, and then you can bring them back to AI. Once everything's functioning and working together as you expected, I find that that approach helps me stay a lot more focused. It helps me actually finish what I'm working on. Because otherwise, you know, I could spend 20, 30 minutes or even an hour tweaking the screen and going over iterations and things like that. But that is not the point of this 14-day roadmap. Our point is to learn to use AI to build these things so that we can actually ship them with the goal of making money, becoming an indie developer full-time, or just having your own app and side project. So just keeping a list of things that you want polished and fixed later is really helpful, because then also if they're in a list, you're not going to forget them later on. And I think it's just the most helpful way to approach that. So we're going to let this finish the calendar view, and then we'll review that work and move on to the AI feature. Okay, so Codex is telling us that our calendar view is now production ready. Let's see if it is true. I'm going to rerun the app now that the new calendar is in there. As expected, we have an error or two. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it in, and fix these errors. We're giving such a big chunk of something to do all at once, and so of course it's going to miss things. The better approach is to split things out into smaller chunks, and so build out the calendar and then add the functionality to what happens when you press on a calendar item and present the detail view. Just splitting things out into smaller little chunks is a better way for the AI to not lose track of what it's doing. It's way less error prone that way. It's typically what I recommend as I'm going through once if I have a very detailed plan for how I want my app to function. So now I've got this calendar view, and you'll notice it looks quite a bit different from our original design. And my hunch is that we're using the calendar that is included in Swift UI. I believe there is such a thing anyway. Looks like actually we're not. It just built one, but let's see. So we probably don't want to be able to go forward, right? That doesn't really make sense. But if we have an entry for today, we tap it, the sheet's going to pop up with all the entries from that day. If we tap one, okay. So maybe this isn't like maybe our favorite way this functions. I would prefer those to not pop up in the sheet. I would prefer them just to be below the calendar. And I don't like that if I open an entry and then I close the entry, I'm not brought back to the list. And then of course the navigation title is there, and we don't want that. So let's make a list of everything we want Codex to fix for us. So I want them to remove the navigation title, which is this calendar thing here, or the text. Then we also want the journal entries of specific day to be shown below the calendar, not on a sheet as it presents here. And then I want the background of a selected day to be more prominent. It's very hard to see that that is the current day. And then for 4, the journal entry card should have the same style as those in the home view. So I noticed that these look slightly different than these do because the play button and the mood indicator are all the way to the side. And these ones are all the way to the left. So those just need to look consistent. And then the last thing was all screens in the app should pervert dark mode over light. See how the tab bar is in light mode here and it's dark mode here? My guess is that's a color scheme issue. And so I'm just going to tell it to make sure we are in dark mode always because that just looks better for this. So I'm going to have it go through and make fixes. Pro tip here is I almost always, I just forgot in this instance, but I say, ask me any questions to fill understanding gaps instead of making assumptions. So then we'll come back with a list of, at least a couple of questions. So it doesn't assume things here and things match your preferences better. It's so much more helpful for the accuracy of the AI tool to deliver what you're expecting versus it making assumptions and having to go through this iterative process over and over. It's easier just to have it say, hey, if you don't understand something or you're not sure what to do, ask me and then I'll answer and then we'll just get it right the first time, fixes and things like this. So even for the initial calendar prompt that I did, I should have done that because sure, AI wrote our prompt, but it's still not going to be perfect necessarily. And so if I say, hey, ask me about any questions you have about implementing this and decisions that need to be made, instead of just assuming things, then it would ask me questions before it got to work. So it's more in line with your expectations. So it's going to go and make these changes for us, and then we are going to see how it looks after that. Okay, so it's gone through and made all the changes that we need. So let's run that one more time and see how our calendar feature is looking now. Okay, this is already better. So we can see the current day, and it's a little blue highlight, which looks a lot better. Changing this allows us to see this without needing a sheet. Then this pops up. There's not a play button on that one because there's no audio. Then this looks the same. Perfect. The October 6th thing is redundant, but I'm going to leave that for now. They do want the same styling of everything on the right. Oh yes, the last thing is we should not be able to scroll to months in the future and days in the future should be grayed out. Just one little quality of life thing for the user. So we don't really want them to be able to tap on days in the future because it doesn't make sense. There's not going to be entries for future dates. And same thing, like it's just unnecessary. So while it's fixing that, we are going to go back to ChatGPT and then we say, I want you to write a highly detailed prompt for implementing the AI feature. We will be using the new foundation models framework for this. Okay, so I just wrote a prompt to finish the AI feature. I expected the main feature that we were after today, using the foundation models framework from Apple to write a synopsis or infer the mood from the journal entry while fixing the calendar in the future navigation issue. So I'm going to let that go. And I gave it the link to the foundation models framework again, because it's not trained on that data. It's going to be completely new. And so I'm curious to see how this is going to actually work with the foundation models. I think it's going to do a fine job, but we may have to do some manual interference here. So we will see how that works. Looks like we've got an error. So I'm just going to screenshot this, copy it. This is the great part about working with AI and having it run things is you can just do multiple things at once. So you can typically move pretty fast when you're working on these vibe coded apps. So I'm going to let that work for a little while. And then once it's done with the prompt and the fix, we are going to get that last feature in and wrap up for today. Okay, so let's close this out and review the prompt from this. It went out and researched the foundation models framework. And given that I have a little bit of knowledge on this, I'll be able to fact check it pretty quickly. System language model capability check. So we need to make sure that their device can actually run or actually have Apple Intelligence support first. Then we want some guided generation because we're expecting a mood output from AI, and then streaming snapshots if we want that. And then it's going to break this down on how to do things. This is some guided generation stuff, system prompt. Okay, this looks good. So I'm going to copy this, go back to Codex. Looks like it finished our errors and I don't see them anymore. So that means those are fixed. And then I'm going to actually compact this, because this is a big feature that we're adding with unfamiliar stuff. And so I think I just want to free up the context window for that. While it's doing that, we're going to check the calendar. We've grayed out future features, but we can go all the way in the past. Cool. Don't know if I love the dots on all of those future days, but I'm going to leave that for now. So I'm going to paste in that prompt and I'm going to say, I want you to build this feature. Here is a link to the Apple Foundation Models documentation. That is the AI I want to use for this. I'm going to go back to Safari, copy that link, paste that in there. And I'm also going to give it some additional links so that we just give it as much context as we can to help with the accuracy. So prompt, all right, that should give it enough context that it can poke around and figure this out. Okay, so I'm going to let it go through and build that. It should go through and read the links as well, just to fully understand everything that's going on. And then we'll see how it does with building something with a tool that's not trained on. Codex has been running for about 20 minutes or so now, and it's really interesting how it's approached this. I wanted to hop on before it finished because I have hit 90% of my 5-hour limit on the $20 a month plan, which makes me think I may need to upgrade soon. But the approach that it took for the foundation models to learn about that is it didn't actually dive into the links. Maybe Codex can't search the web, but what it did was dive into the source code, which you can do inside of Xcode. So for example, I can go and click into view, and it will show me this is like the source code for what a view is in SwiftUI. So it took that approach and studied the foundation models framework. But this is one of the reasons I really like using Codex, is because it actually puts in the work to understand what it needs to do before it does it. This is a little bit different than my experience with Cloud Code in the past, is that it's a great model and it's really helpful, but it needs kind of all the information up front and doesn't seem to do quite as much digging about the code base and diving into source code and stuff to figure out what it needs to do. I've used Cloud Code and it's really good at thinking and coming up with creative solutions and kind of doing what it's trained on, but it doesn't do as much context grabbing, in my experience anyway, as Codex does. And so that's why I picked Codex for a project like this, was because I knew we'd be using something that an AI model wasn't trained on. So hopefully it's able to finish this before we run out of limits. If not, we'll have to wrap it up for today and then move this over to tomorrow. That's kind of the beauty of the 14-day plan, is like, you know, these videos have been 20, 30 minutes long, and that's not that much time to vibe code an app. There's a little bit more time behind the scenes that's just waiting for Codex to run, but everything else that I've done for this app has been on camera, on screen. So you've seen it all, and there's so much more time in the day, right, to work on these projects and fine tune them and stuff. Like, if this were me doing it, you know, off camera, I probably would have spent more time refining this and built out the detail view yesterday and things like that. But keeping on thing with our 14 days, you just do quick little sprints each day. I just move forward. So that's what I like about the 14-day structure, is that this is something you can do either full time and probably do it much quicker, or you can do it when you have a full-time job and you're just doing it on the side, because it really only takes, you know, might be about an hour every day to run through this. And in 2 weeks, you'll have a shipped app. Even if you've never done one before, you can totally do this, even with a full-time job. So that's what I'll say about what Codex has worked on so far, and just kind of the beauty of the 14-day framework that I teach inside my community, App Launch Club. As I mentioned earlier, I have the full 14-day roadmap and breakdowns and prompts and workflows for doing this step-by-step to get your app finally shipped. I know you've had an idea in your head that you're dying to get out there, and App Launch Club is the place to be to get that done. Because any place that this falls short, maybe this feature doesn't compile and Codex can't figure it out, you can send me a message directly and I can dive into your code and help you get that up and running. Okay, almost 30 minutes later, Claude or well, I keep saying that. I've been using Cloud Code a lot before. I switched to Codex just a few weeks ago. It is done with our feature. Let's see if the app runs. I'm honestly going to be amazed if it does. Just kind of like I expected. I want to look at these errors and see what is going on and why this isn't working. So like this one, make schema. Oh, it's just a private function in a service it created. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't calling something it was not allowed to call. So let's just paste these in and say, let's solve these errors. I am amazed though. It wrote a whole feature based on a framework it didn't know. And we only have a handful of errors, which is pretty impressive in my opinion. So I'll have to fix these and then I'll jump back in once they are done. Okay, so we did end up running out of context and I do not feel like upgrading to Pro right now. So there were just a couple errors that it did not catch that I went in and fixed by hand or with AI. I didn't include them in the video because they were just super small, like annoyance things. I didn't really want to spend the time explaining just for brevity. So there's an error here that I didn't really get. So I just used the expert AI feature and hit generate a fix and it worked and compiled. I haven't tested it yet. I just ran the app to make sure there was no extra errors, but they're out of the way now. I only did one manually and it was basically just adding an is recorded property to one of the models. So now we're going to go in and record this. This is a new journal entry where I'm feeling very happy to see if this actually works. I just threw the happy part in there to see if this is actually working. This is transcribing and guessing our mood. I don't really know what happened. I didn't select anything. Let's see if there was an error. Nothing super obvious. And so I'm not sure what happened with that. Let's try a text entry. Let's see, today I feel very happy. I'm going to buy myself a milkshake. Okay, so it looks like it transcribes as we type, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure why I feel so happy. Okay, this is a good place for today because we've mostly built out the whole feature. So we got our calendar view up and running. We got our detail view working really nicely, all with AI, and it got us probably 90% of the way there with our foundation models feature. So I'm going to leave this as is for now. And tomorrow, when we go to build this view out, it should be pretty easy to do, just tracking a streak, right? And maybe adding some notifications to remind them if they're going to lose their streak. We'll kind of decide that later. But because that should be pretty easy, we're going to save the fixing of the foundation models feature tomorrow when we have our limits reset for Codex. But I think it's pretty close. What I'll do is come in here and hit continue and see what it picks up on, and then just say that this is not working. So that's it for today's video, but we've 90% successfully built feature 2, and we have 2/3 just about of our app working. We're going to get the stats up and running. So thanks for tuning in today. If you want the exact workflows and prompts that I use to build AI apps on a daily basis, check out my community, App Launch Club, where I am sharing everything that I know about vibe coding apps, building native iOS apps, and helping you get your app out the door in just 14 days. See you in the next one.